Let's solve some hard PMP questions. I'm going to roll right through them. I'm going to walk through the process. I'm going to teach you a ton. Let's stop talking. Let's start learning. Here we go. All right, sweet. You know the first thing you got to do when you solve any questions is you got to slow down and you got to read the last sentence first. So what does it say? How can the project manager help the Agile teams improve their work? So obviously an Agile project, when they say project manager in Agile, they mean Scrum Master. All right, so we can deal with it. Now, what can we do to improve their work? So there's got to be some problems. Let's go up above and find them. Here we go. So what do they say? A startup needs to quickly expand. We're going to read for context first, right? Its product portfolio to meet market demand. Okay, so we're growing quickly. You can understand the pressures. Put yourself into the game. Feel it. Recently, staff might work on 2 or 3 Agile teams. So put yourself in the shoes of a team member. You're working over here. You're thinking over there. You go over there. Got it? Each dedicated to a different product line. So that makes it even worse, right? Outputs dropping and defects are rising in all teams. How can the project manager help the Agile team improve their work? Now, what you got to do right now is you got to think, okay, I see myself. I understand the pressure. What are the real problems and what would I do? So let's find problems. All right, so we're quickly expanding. That's not a problem, but that's important context. They want to get their product portfolio out there bigger, right? We're going to add a bunch of stuff. The staff might work on 2 or 3 Agile teams, right? That's an issue because in Agile teams, we want to be isolated to one, right? Why is that important? Is because if we can reduce the amount of jumping from project to project, we can isolate down, understand what our work is, and power it through in a flow-based way. Make sense? Right. So number 1, we're throwing them around. That's issue. Number 2, all on different product lines, right? That's just complementary. Outputs dropping, defects are rising. So lots of yellow here. Let's see how many problems we have. Number 1 is up here, like working on a bunch of stuff. Then we have outputs dropping and defects are rising. So 2 different things. Now, when you go through here, one of these problems is pretty darn specific. We're working this way, that way. The other one is general, right? Outputs dropping and defects are rising. So when they say select 2, we have identified the 2 problems that we're solving for, right? Let's see if we can get the answers. You only want to go through each one by itself and see if it answers either number 1 or number 2. Let's go. Number 1 is number A, perform root cause analysis in the next retrospective. So first of all, ask yourself, is this a legal action? Is this reasonable? Sure, like retrospectives are a ceremony in Agile, so that works, right? Root cause analysis, that's a great thing to do. What does it help us do? Helps us get down to the root cause, the real problem. Now, it doesn't say root cause analysis on a specific issue, so this is fairly general. Did we have anything up above that was general? Yeehaw, we did. Number 2 problem seemed pretty general. So I'm going to hang on to that one. I'm going to put a little check there. I'm not in love, but I really like it. Let's go to B. Influence the product owners to right-size their portfolios. What does that mean? It means that in commonplace, it means that if we're going to do 5 new products, hey, we can't manage that much from a team's basis. Why don't we just go down to 2? So it's cutting down what we're actually going to deliver to the market. Is that a good thing? Well, it might be in a sense if you're, using that strategically to go out there and help the company deliver on certain things like starting things and finishing them. But what is the real goal here? The company wants to quickly expand its product portfolio. So without any kind of pre-work, it's just saying, hey, cut that goal. Let's just shimmy down and go forward. So I don't love that, right? There's a lot of things that we could do in front of that. If that comes to that point, like, hey, dudes, we can't do it unless we add money, resources, time, effort, whatever, then it might get there. But right now, we got a lot of thinking and working to do. So let's eliminate it. C, organize dedicated teams to reduce context switching. Okay. Well, anytime you go into these questions and you find words that maybe you don't know, like I'll take a guess and say, maybe you don't know what context switching is. Get you right? Some of you might know. Well, what is context switching? Context switching is when you have, person going to 2 or 3 or more pursuits at the same time. It's kind of like you go to the meeting, like going to go meeting A, then B, then C, and they're all about different things. Kind of like what's happening here, because the reality of what happens when you jump, your brain has to reformat, has to think differently, and you lose productivity. It's not just like if you work 3 things, your brain can get equal productivity and equal output on 1, 2, and 3. That's not how it works. You lose effectiveness, and at some point, all you're doing is trying to balance yourself and jump to meetings, and you get nothing done. B-A-D, bad. But in this situation, does it solve one of the problems? Yes, it does. This one, number 1, where we go up here, as I drew around my face. Oh, right here. It goes up there, them jumping around to different things. Awesome. So we like that one. Now, you want to go through all the answers because there may be another one that just blows it out of the water in the positive sense, but we've grabbed a hold of 2 that we really like. Let's go to D. Appoint dedicated test teams to offload from the agile teams. Is that a good practice? Do we want to have the workers on this side and the testers over here? Never the 2 shall meet. No, I don't think that's a good thing, right? We want agile teams to be integrated together. Everybody testing their work, working together, handing on great things, and moving it through the system. So while this may appear to somebody to say, hey, the teams will just work on creating things and they'll throw it down the pipe for the testers, that's a bad thing. Integrate them together. So I don't like D. Every answer, you got to know why you don't like it, by the way, guys. E. Train the agile teams to improve time and focus management. Now, it may be a problem. They might be smoking cigarettes, goofing off, drinking Mountain Dew, not doing their job. They might not be balancing their calendar well or doing whatever. That might be the problem. But is there any context in this question that says anything like that? Is there anything there? What I bet in your head, you go, well, that's probably the problem, or that might be the problem, or that could cause it. If you're in those wishy-washy maybe words, you got to be very careful and not pick it. So we're going to cross it out, all right? Because that doesn't specifically go to a problem. This is a very specific thing, time and focus. We'd have to find some time and focus up there. So what do we like? We like A, we like C, because it solves 1 and it solves 2. See if we got it right, y'all. Boom, we got it right. So what can we learn from this? First of all, when you go through there, the answers will be much easier to find if you identify where you're going and what the problem is. That's so we threw that 1 and that 2 there, right? Then the other thing is you take each one by itself and say, does it solve the problem in there? If we do that, easy peasy lemon squeezy, get a little bit better. And we always want to look first, is it legal, quote unquote, and then does it solve the problem? And then does it solve it the best way possible? So it's a phased approach. You do that, you're going to get real good. Let's go to the next one, all right? As we drink coffee, almost drinking coffee. Next question, where do we start? Last sentence, you know that. What can the agile team do to resolve this situation? So when they say resolve the situation, you know what your eyes are going to be looking for? A situation. So let's look for a situation, dudes. A trend of stories uncompleted at the end of iterations has become apparent. Multiple team members worked on these stories and no blockers were identified. What can the agile team do to resolve this situation? So what's the deal here? We got to see ourselves. Obviously, we're in agile because we got stories, we got iterations, blockers. These are agile terms, and it says agile team, easy peasy. All right, so what's happening? It says a trend of stories uncompleted. So what's a trend? Thing that happens over time, multiple times. So this isn't just like a boom, we had a bad sprint, which happens, No, this is happening multiple times. So it's systemic potentially, right? So we have a trend of uncompleted stories at the end of iterations. Okay, has become apparent. Multiple team members worked on these stories. So that's good, right? We're sharing, we're working through there, we're collaborating. And no blockers were identified. So if we're working on stuff together and there's no blockers, meaning nothing that stops us, we're not, stuck, we can't get around something, none of that stuff's been held up, but we never get stuff done, what could be the problem? Got to ask yourself. Well, before we go to the answers, let's think it through, you and I. One thing could be a naive team, a young team, a scared team, something like that. This is just for practical points where they don't want to raise their hand. So there might be blockers. They just don't want to raise them. There's no indication that that's the problem. But if you're in practical world, that might be an issue, right? Okay. But the other thing is, if there's no blockers and they're working well together relatively, and they're moving through and they're working together and they can't get stuff done or all the stuff done, what could be a problem? Well, they could be taking in too much work, right? They just take in too much work, or the stories might dictate that they are a lot of work, so they're having to take in ginormous chunks, same kind of problem. They might have poor estimation like skills at this point, or lack of understanding. And that may be dictated potentially by the product owner not working well enough with the team and the subject matter experts to break it down and help them understand and, refine the stories down so that they're smaller, better understood, better estimatable. And the team might need to improve their estimating skills, if you will. So a lot of stuff around there. Let's go searching, all right? Now let's go to A. So that's the problem we're going to solve. It says put the stories back in the backlog, the product backlog, and wait for a less intensive iteration to work on them. You like that one? No, that's not a good one, right? That's the one that's bad because right off the bat, we're going to say, wait for a less intensive iteration to work on. No, that's bad. We don't want to do that. There is no less intensive iteration, right? Okay. B, use the next iteration for a team spike to determine the feasibility of completing the stories. Team spikes, another word or phrase you probably don't know, but if you don't, it's no big deal. It means we go down specifically, boom, to research. We put a story in during one sprint to research one thing and dive down deep the team to say, hey, how technically do we do this? How do we work around this? How do we figure this out? It's for one issue where the team will allocate a certain amount of time for one person to go down, do the research, come back up and say, this is what I learned so that we can move forward. Now, is this a point issue or is this a systemic issue? This seems like a systemic issue, so a specific dive down on one thing is not what the doctor needs. So that's gone. Let's go to C. Put the stories in the block column and work with the product owner to remove impediments. Now, we don't have a blocked issue, right? We don't have a blocked story, so what are we going to put there? All right? Now, that doesn't look good because there's no blocked, right? But there is such a thing on a Kanban board or in the side of a sprint for a block column. And what is it? It's just part of the actual, the board that shows like, hey, let's bring visibility to these stories because they're stuck. We need help. That's what it is. Let's see D. Work with the product owner to further break down the stories in the backlog and update the definition of ready. Now, we talked earlier when we put ourselves in this question, we said maybe we need to break down the work more. Maybe we need to understand the work as it comes in. Maybe we need to set better standards for what work comes in so we don't set ourselves up for failure, which we tend to be doing right now. That seems to be what the doctor ordered. Let's go with D. Boom, yeah. That's it. Now, so what is the definition of ready? I want you to see work as, this little Snicker bar looking thing, right? Oh, it's, here. So this is the sprint. This is 2 weeks, right? What's in the sprint? Our team, right? Developers, the team, etc. It's all those folks here. The product owner, what does that person control? The backlog, bing, bang, boom, bam, bam, bing, boom, boom. All these little user stories. And on the back end, let me draw it so I can see it, is the customer. Smiling as they are. We want to make them happier every single day. So there's two things you need to know. There's a definition of ready on the front end, and there's a definition of done on the back end. Now, what are those things? All right. Definition of ready right off the bat tells us what is the standard by which we think as the team it's acceptable to bring stories or work in. Standard we establish for what needs to be nailed down so that the work can be brought in and we have less of a chance to screw it up, get surprised, get overwhelmed, stuff like that. So it's team defined. That might be like, hey, it's broken down to this level, it's a certain amount of documentation, etc., all there, so that when we get it and we go, oh, we can estimate it or it has been estimated, we bring it in, boom, the team has a better understanding, they have a better chance of nailing it down. So that is that the work is ready to be started and worked with a good chance of being completed. Sound good? Now, on the back end, definition of D-O-N-E, done, is like, hey, I'm finishing work, you're finishing work, the other person's finishing work. When we say we are done with our work, do we have the same standards? Does my work doneness match your work doneness? Because if we're passing work between each other and we're putting it on for an increment, a potentially shippable item, right? We need to be able to trust that I've completed all the testing. I've completed all the work. I've documented everything. I've worked it through. It's ready to push. All these different things, and that you're not just goofing off and kind of 88% getting there, because that's going to set us up for rework, problems, lack of trust, lack of collaboration, lack of good junk as we move through. So, team defines both of these. What does it take to get in? What does it take to get out? If we do that, better world exists. Yeehaw. Let's go to the last one. Where do we start? Last sentence. I got to do it every time. How should the project manager address the complaint? So if they're saying address the complaint, let's look for a complaint. Okay, a frustrated Agile team member approaches the project manager to complain that the senior team member is monopolizing all the interesting backlog items. Okay, what should the project manager do to address the complaint? Put yourself in the game. You're the project manager. Team member comes up, says, oh, the senior person, they're stealing all the cool stuff, all the interesting stuff, and this ain't fun. I don't like it. Help me out. Aren't you a servant leader? Why don't you do something? Remove that roadblock. That dude's a roadblock. Help me out. What would you do? Now, if you ever dealt with any kind of Scrum Masters, and that's what, when they say project manager and they're in Agile, they're really talking about Scrum Master. Really great Scrum Masters, in a sense, are frustrating. If you're like, I want something done. I want somebody to help me. What do they do a lot of times? They kind of ask you very perplexing or very engaging questions to make you think about how you got into this situation, how you can get out of it, and how you can work better. Because that's their job. It's to help the machine and the people within it work better together. They're mechanics, but they don't touch the engine, right? They help the engine improve itself. So if we're like that person, we're not going to go fired or hired, or this person do this work, or here's how it goes. No, we're going to help that person work through it and the team work through it so that we can get out of this situation and understand potentially what the root cause is, so systemically we can deal with it. Let's go. Now, let's go to A. Encourage the complaining team member to take assertiveness. It's like, hey, buddy, you need to stand up for yourself. If they're taking the stuff and you want the stuff, the only way you get it is to push back. No. B-A-D bad. Let's not do that, because I don't know anything about the interesting work. Is it the right thing that should be worked on? Do they have it spread out? Is there complications between it? What are we really solving by doing this? We're potentially causing a problem. So bad, bad, bad. Okay? B, discuss the importance of fairness with a team member. So that's going to the other side. Instead of telling the young guy to go push up on the big guy, you're telling the big guy, the senior person, hey, you ought to be nice. Why aren't you sharing? Come on, Agile's all about friendship and collaboration and all that jazz. No, dude. Like, you don't know if that's how the organization there. And then, are you going to get involved in every single little squabble and communication? Don't you want the team to be able to work through these things? By doing that and swooping in like a white knight, you are hurting the team. So don't hurt the team. B's bad. What's a senior team member going to say? Why are you coming to me, man? This guy... it's going to start a fight. C, define a new rule so team members can select an item on a rotating basis. That basically is like, hey, I'm going to solve your problem. I went to the deli this other day. You take a number, you get some ham. You take a number, you get some cheese. You take a number, you get some turkey. Same thing works here. Works for the deli. Might as well work for us, brothers. No, you're not dictating the rules. The engine must fix itself. You must go in there and say, why is the work being assigned there? How do you guys assign work? What is best for the product and the customer? Y'all need to work it out. I can watch you. I can ask questions. I can shine a light. I can put a mirror in front of you. But me dictating an arbitrary rule to keep one griping person, happy, while the other person might be griping, I might be doing hot potato, taking an upset person and handing it to another one, and then I got nothing. Bye-bye. D, ask the team member to define ground rules for work. Ask the team, to define ground rules for work distribution. It's a nice way to say, okay, so interesting stuff. I get it. All right, I understand. I'm a Scrum Master now. How are you guys splitting up work? How's it work? And he might start talking, cool. Does everybody have an understanding? Have you guys talked it through? I know this senior person can be whatever they are, but why don't you guys sit and talk about it and say, why don't you express it in the next retro, and we walk through how y'all can work together and spread work out and do what's best for whom, what's best for the product. While we're still thinking about development and all these other things, The best thing we need to do is y'all need to learn how to play together nicely. All right? So I like D. How about you? Let's go. Bang, we nailed it. Right. So right there, we are being servant leaders by helping them develop the skills to solve their own problems. I don't know how long that took to go through 3, but I went deep and I tried to fix it all for you. If you like these, comment below. If you want to go to my trial of the best PMP course in the world that makes everything visual, engaging, fun, and we break things down so they go, aha, they finally make sense, then come on, go down below, hit the trial, and you come in, you get videos, you get to go coaching call with me, where I'll work with you through problems like this, and the world will be a better place. See you soon. Adios. Bye-bye.